even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table.
Hey. God, I just love the sounds of Larry Heard. What is going on? Don't you do this to me. Hello, cheering your boys, Lucas and
Bobby from the Bronx. Back at it again.
We're your newbie expat go-to newspad podcast and all that good stuff. I'm going to add Bitch Fest because I've been adding that lately because Lord knows. And today on the pod, we have author, activist, and I'm going to say poet as well as badass profe, Mr. Benjamin Gorman here, as we have found. And I mean, we got a round table of talks here because we've had a couple of sessions ago, we had Lady Annie Grohl and some of our people that joined us from
DA.
Thank you.
And then your friend who's an aspiring musician in Barcelona.
Okay, and that was a good thing. And now we have any more things that are going on. Now we're supposed to just jump right in with intros and hellos to Ben. So Ben, what up, man?
How's it going today? I mean, it's very cool to transition from the last show. Like that was amazing. So everybody's listening. Welcome.
You know what, folks?
I
know. I guess we have to do the whole IG thing because remember, you can follow us as well as The Way Shit Works Now at the podcast here on Instagram as well as on YouTube. We want you to follow The Way. You can probably find it The Way Ish Works on YouTube because of their censors and all that good stuff. Yeah. But we're gonna say the what up and here, damn it, The Way Shit Works Now because things work in a whole different element. And Lord knows, Bobby, what were you doing last night? Tell the good people.
Oh, just a little wine tasting with friends.
I suck on my banana.
A little wine tasting with friends. It was pretty excellent. All the couples brought wines from different regions, and it was way above my head because I just drink it and I get drunk. But I learned.
Are you fully recovered or mostly recovered, or how are you feeling today?
I mean, let's say mostly recovered. But let's do Ben right with a proper introduction.
All right, let's do that, sir. Please, you want to take it away? I think
absolutely.
You should take it away.
Ben, why don't you tell us about yourself? We hear poet, we hear author, we hear activist press, we hear a lot of good things about Not a Pipe Publishing. Would you give us a little rundown?
Sure. So I have been a public school teacher for the last 21 years in the United States, and going into this election, we knew this was no longer going to be a safe place for us, so we had been looking, and we had decided, okay, now it's time to be an expat. But I also own a small press, and so Not a Pipe Publishing, so we got the logo here. Those of you who are watching on YouTube can see that. So that gave me an opportunity to come here and continue to publish the science fiction, fantasy, but we're brought in poetry kind of books that we publish. And then I just came out with a book that is the explanation. It's called Dear America, A Breakup Letter, explaining why we knew we had to go. Like, this was not going to be a
your family
place to be. Yeah, and so my family and I moved to Barcelona, and we love it here. Like, it's, we're lucky to get to live in this
agree.
City.
It's a beautiful city. It's a beautiful city. But that wasn't even the first book you've written.
No, that was I had written, this was my first nonfiction. So before that, I had 5 novels, a couple of books of a couple of poetry collections. So this was a kind of change of pace.
Yeah.
And for me to, frame it, because, for a reader, you don't want to just read a political rant, right? So I framed it as like a Dear John letter, but it's, Dear America, this is why this relationship is not going to work out.
Yeah.
And, just going through and saying that, we have clearly parted ways. I still care about you, but this relationship is unhealthy.
Right.
And you are going to need to face some stuff if you and would I ever be able to return to this relationship, right? Like that kind of feeling, like what would it take, and so it was good to kind of frame it that way and make it a little bit more, I don't know if entertaining is the right word, because it's a heavy ass book, but like, at least a little more enjoyable for the reader to go through and go, oh, it's a Dear John letter to a country that's in some deep shit.
Sometimes they say it's not you, it's me, but in this case, it's you.
Exactly, and that was part of the framing. Was like,
I like that.
It's you this time, America. Like,
And you know what? And the book got some generated good buzz as well on Amazon, and I think a lot of people are feeling that. There's certainly, one of the people that we had, there's another show that I host here in Barcelona, but we had a gentleman who's hosting a film festival here, here in the city, and one of their main speakers is going to be Richard Gere, who's just ripped his family and moved to Madrid.
Yeah.
Madrid. And what was the impetus besides what was happening? Was there something specific that freaked you out that made you want to get them out of Dodge?
I mean,
and what
me,
did you teach?
Yeah,
also?
I was a language arts, English, social studies teacher,
Brilliant.
and so studying this kind of thing, and the language arts piece is really as relevant as the history. Like this is the rhetoric that we were seeing should have been a heads up to everybody. But I was very politically active in the United States, and the death threats that I was getting were genuinely terrifying.
Jesus, really?
Oh,
You were
yeah.
getting death
I was
threats?
getting a lot of
Oh,
death
my
threats. So
God.
our community was interesting. It wasn't like deep red Eastern Oregon, and it wasn't very blue Portland. We lived in a small town that was remarkably purple because it's kind of an agricultural community, and historically the kind of farmer land owners are very much the Trumpers, and then the people who actually work in the fields are blue, but kind of culturally more conservative. And then we have a small university there in town, so it was this real purple community. And in that context, the folks who were on the far right were going, hey, the local English teacher standing out on the corner with a Black Lives Matter sign, he is somehow a threat to us. Saying that black people should not be murdered is dangerous to us.
Yeah.
So we need to tell this guy, we're coming for you. And so some of them rose to the level where it was like, I had to call the FBI and go through that. And I was talking to a friend who worked with the FBI, and they said, I got to protect this person's identity because,
of course.
But, they said, I said to them, will I be able to go to the FBI in the next administration if Trump wins and say I'm getting the following death threats? And they said, no, you'd be calling the Proud Boys.
Essentially.
And I was like, okay, this is not going to be a physically safe place to be. And so that was, my
So the Proud Boys had infiltrated.
exactly.
I mean, you think about it like I'm sure he's speaking on a level of, the idea that the president is just freed a bunch of them from seditious conspiracy charges, and Laura Loomer just got a bunch of people fired from the administration in the national security space.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are going to be, they're gutting the civil rights department. They're,
And the morale in these departments is just decimated.
Yeah, of course.
Which in every department except the IRS is terrible.
I think it's important.
The IRS might not be collecting taxes for the next few years. They're a mess.
Right.
And thousands have also been let go from their positions. We will get
Legally, and sometimes
exactly, and we will get to a little bit about something that's been going on in the Department of Labor and a whistleblower there later on in the show. I think when you say that, I think it's really important to make note of the fact that who the Proud Boys were, who the Oath Keepers are, who these types of bands, because some of our audience, certainly in the immigrant and expat community, who are not out from the U.S., might not know that these are normally, not always, I mean, look at Tadario, whatever his name was, that brother was Cuban or whatever the hell. But it's mostly usually a very white Anglo-Saxon Protestant type of faction or militia that formed to protect people. Now, members of them right now are actually lining up in certain states of the country and defending and protecting Tesla factories.
Looking for fights with protesters. Or
with their rifles and everything drawn.
Exclusively men. Like this is a young men who are agitated and angry phenomena, young white men.
I don't know if it's a phenomena. I feel like it's always been there.
Yes.
It's just gone underground and then back up and then underground, then back up.
And now they have a seat at the table at the White House.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing, because I asked somebody that I really care for, and they're British. And so I asked him, are there a plethora of families that still grow up teaching their kids, because you are white, you are right, you are this way? And he said, I'm sure there are. I was not raised this way. So that's British.
But
I want to take it to the
the
US.
variation in the United States. One of the writers I really admire is Jamel Bouie. If you get a chance to read him, he's fantastic. And he was talking about telling a story about in college, saying to he's a black author, was saying to a roommate, why is it that I, as a black man, deal with this kind of pushback? And his roommate, in this very kind of transparent moment, said, I have been trained as a white man to believe that if you as a black man have power, you will treat us the way we treat you. And so there's this deep fear that if people of color gain equality, they will demand vengeance.
Right.
And so there is this, the Proud Boys are not brave and they are a terrified group of man babies who before just were keyboard warriors and now have been activated because they feel empowered to go out on the streets and defend whiteness. They don't say they're defending whiteness. They know better than to be that, transparent, but they're defending the way things they believe ought to be, which is let's go back, make America great again. Let's go backwards to a time of white supremacy.
Rights. Yeah, that's what they want.
Pre-civil rights, 1970s feminism. They want to go back to a time when, the white male was dominant. Yeah. And they find any danger to that an existential threat because they're saying everybody else who we've been mistreating for centuries is going to demand vengeance because that's what we would do, right? And they can't get away from their own framing of I would get revenge and kill people, so they will do that
because I have done that for years,
for centuries.
So it's been ingrained in my mind.
There's nothing new about it.
No, but we're going back even further. We're going back to the 1300s when the Slavics, who were the original slaves of Europe. Look at the word Slavic. Were pushed out because, well, shit, they can integrate. So we need to go get some black folk. And that's what the Portuguese and Dutch did. And so, historian here. Yeah. And so, and one of the things that I've seen, because I grew up as the only Mexican family in a white country club in South Texas, which was fun. And then I moved to Brooklyn as a teen, and it was a very different story, power to the people, to everyone. And so I knew growing up that this was part of the thing that was the quietly never said part. And what I want people to know is that there is unfortunately a plurality of white Anglo-Saxon Catholic Protestants throughout Europe and the Americas and beyond. Australia, we're looking at you children, who truly teach their kids because you're a white, you are right, you are God. And if you're a Christian Protestant, it even goes further beyond that. And it's scary to know, especially when you are black, I would say, or because I'm a lighter skinned Latino, and so I got away with some things for passing issues, but I never chose to, I would never, like we were talking white-tino yesterday with your queen. And that shit was just not allowed because of what my parents had got through. Specifically, like Chris Rock said, nobody's more racist than your over 70-year-old black or brown grandparent because they've been through some shit.
Yeah, in your family, and you've seen it.
And you've seen it. And so one thing that I was telling some university students the other day is that I had never experienced any form of racism in New York City, only here in Catalonia, in London, and in Texas. Yeah. And so how do you explain that to a different audience who's not taking it from, this fucking Mexican Jew talking?
Well, I think one of the things that folks, here in Spain are going to need to acknowledge is this is very much going to be a global phenomena. I mean, it is.
It already is,
the push, but it is only going to magnify because what is going to happen as a consequence of global climate change is the global south is going to move north.
Mass migration,
and that is our fault in the global north. Like we have pushed people into unlivable conditions in the global south.
How did we do that?
Literally, it's going to be too hot to live in certain places.
That's true.
Right? And there's going to be, and it won't manifest as, it's a hot day, so I'm moving my family. Like, it's not the way it works. It'll be, there's a drought, there is a famine, there is a disease. We have to, the civil war in Syria, we, see it in the West very much as there was a civil war. That's why there are refugees, which is true. The part of the story we often don't think about is there was a civil war because there was a drought, and there was a drought because of global climate change. Yeah. And so then the refugees move into Europe and into Western Europe, and we see in France, in the UK, Brexit is a consequence of climate change. Like there is a path from a drought
that's one
in Syria
aspect of it.
Yeah, a greater.
That's one aspect.
And so then the immigrant population moves into a place, and folks who say, but I understood my world. But I was dominant. And now this is changing. And we see this in Spain.
But
there are folks going, so many immigrants. And some of it's legit. Like housing prices are going to be nuts worldwide, in the global north, because people are saying, I need a place to live. And the north can either say, we're going to welcome people and build a shit ton of housing because, we caused this problem, or they're going to say, build a wall. We need to keep everybody out. And that's going to lead to this rise of fascism.
And one's so much easier to say than the other, right?
Right.
So that's
one's
why
a good slogan. You say to people, you're frustrated with your rent, build a wall. And people go, oh, yeah, that solves all my problems. Right. Or, no, build an apartment complex. It's going to be really difficult. There's going to be more traffic. That's not sexy. Like, nobody likes it. Yeah. But we are going to need to say, either welcome or we're going to create a political framework, country by country, that's how do we keep people out? And exclusionary governments are going to they're going to lean towards fascism, just kind of naturally. And so this is a very much there's no escaping this. Not like by moving to Spain I got away from all racism. Like that's not that's not the way the world
especially
works,
not
right?
in Catalonia.
And the damages of climate change are global.
Exactly.
I think it's also you make a very good point in the fact that we've turned verifiable scientific data into a debate. Right. So some oil company shill and a climate scientist are going to be put on the same level. I'm sick to death of it.
But it's also historical, I think, because also we have to also know that Europe, as the landlocked, mostly anyway, landlocked continent, is the poorest resource continent in the world.
Yes.
And in the 13th and 1400s is when Europeans went and stole everything from Africa and America, specifically Spain, who was the first empire. Hello. And so all of that food is being depleted. People who grow quinoa in Bolivia can't afford their own quinoa now because we have taken it so much where it's $1.86 on sale over here, and they can't afford it, and they're cultivating it for us. So for about 800 years, 700 years since the Caliphate, we have been taking all of their food and oil, and that is another reason, besides climate change, that they have been moving here because you took all our shit, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And that is something that cannot be denied. And it wasn't a bunch of black trans lesbians who were doing that.
Yeah, right.
And I'm always going to circle back to that fact because, like my bitches say, and I've had it news podcast, this is a white supremacist thing. We are dealing with a white trash supremacy society takeover. And I'm not, and I don't want to offend anybody. I'm just going to keep it motherfucking real.
I can't be offended by a fact. That's the thing. That's why I think our show is good, because him and I can have these kinds of conversations. I'm going to get, the right's going to call me some cuck social justice warrior nonsense because I fucking know
can
history.
read a book.
And he can read because he's got a queen at home, just saying. But
the history of race, I think, is really important for people to study. The
Please,
people who were
Lord.
doing this were, and I used to tell students this, the Europeans were not sitting around going, we're twisting our mustaches, we think of ourselves as evil. They were saying, how can we go and take laborers and take spices, because our food is fucking bland, right? How can we go get this from, Indonesia and still sleep at night? I know the way to do that is to convince ourselves people are not human beings. And so the history of race science is a history of justifying inhumane treatment to others. You say, okay, well, the people we're taking aren't people. Now I'm not a bad person. The land that I am taking doesn't belong to people because they don't count as people. The spices that we are taking don't count as theft. Right. So I'm not committing this, one of the, breaking the 10 Commandments because I'm helping. I'm bringing culture to this group of people rather than stealing.
God. I'm bringing God.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so then, once you dehumanize the majority of people in the world, I've got a friend who says we should not be calling, her a minority. She says, no, I'm part of the global majority. Once a small group says to the global majority, you don't count as human anymore, that is the foundation for global politics to this day. And if we're not willing to challenge that, and this is one of the points that I try to make in the book, there's this temptation to say, oh, Trump is the problem. Trump is a symptom. That fat bastard is going to die. And when he does, I think people are going to feel this inclination to go,
going to happen
good,
soon,
it's over.
by the way.
Yeah, and
He's
then they're going to go,
obese 79-year-old.
everything is fine now. I had friends say to me, so you're leaving for 4 years. And I was like, do you think this is all going to be gone in 4 years? If you're not willing to address what were the conditions that created this, and you think, oh, well, this regime is gone, therefore white supremacy is gone.
Right.
No
Everything's
way.
solved. Everything's
Gotta really address
great.
deeper issues in the United States, and this exists in
The
other parts of the
conditions
world as well.
Are the idiocies of people like the Confederacy of Dunce's wonderful book. Check it out, Children
so
of the
good.
Corn. Of people who believe that Chris Hemsworth, who is also 6'3" and 224 pounds, is the same built and physique as the newly medically reported Trump, who is also apparently 6'3" and 225 pounds.
Yeah.
Now,
How does a doctor get to comply with their oath and then put out a statement?
because
like
Roger
that?
Ailes and Rupert Murdoch since 1996 have besieged a plethora of mostly white Christian nationals, evangelicals, to believe that everything that they read and see on that bloody thing has been. And so when you infect that for 29 years, as it is now, 2025, it is easy to already lead a certain people, as we talked about in the first show, of people who believe that the Virgin Mary had a baby
Wow.
that led that. I mean, when you have
Thank
that
you.
simpleton mindset, it's already based. And Let me just remind my crazy Christian cultures that Jesus was a Jew. So keep praying to your Jew for your health.
Can you
and
tell
this
we're
is-
fans of-
And this is one of the points that I made in my book that was the most controversial was, Christianity needs to reflect. Like if you, spend every week going for an hour and being told, just listen to the person at the pulpit and do as you are told, you are primed to now go, I turned on Fox News, the person in the pulpit told me this, I will believe, and somebody can lie to you. And
Are you trash talking Paula White?
Sorry. I come from that background. I was raised in a Christian household, and
Pastor's son right here.
double.
Oh, wow.
Both my parents, PKs. Oh my gosh, yeah. And so trauma,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
My parents are wonderful. But that culture leads to you should believe, you should obey. And if people have been taught to obey and believe enough, there's a reason why, we have these discussions with people and we're like, hey, I can provide you with facts. Yeah, I cannot provide you with a half an hour an hour every Sunday of being trained. Ignore facts. Like I can't overcome that.
Over decades and centuries.
And your entire identity
Exactly.
revolves around. It's the same thing with
Identity
Matt. It's the same thing. That's what they are using in the global right-wing movements now, is co-opting your entire identity. So it's not, and you brought it back to Chris Rock. He's like, I have some shit I'm liberal about, I have some shit I'm conservative about. It's become your entire identity to completely join the blob, to completely fill in with all of these other people that are charlatans often. So there's lots of good
Straight
people.
the hell up.
Lots
Great
of good
band, by the
people
way.
are being manipulated. And I think we need to understand that there's a line here. The people being manipulated and the manipulators. And I have a lot of hatred and fire and vitriol for the manipulators. I understand people that got sucked into a cult. And now it doesn't excuse them of all their actions and their destructive behaviors and belief systems, but it is something worth considering when trying to address problems and put out fires. I think like the United States was primed for somebody like Trump because, number one, we have no historical reference whatsoever for a dictatorship. We have a system in place that was basically the only way the powerful were held accountable is if you shamed them. Like their ethics laws were basically garbage. The Supreme Court has been unraveling corruption laws for a very long time,
That's
and so
right.
have local courts.
And
it's a bad
I have to break in here, my brother.
do it, please.
You mentioned the cult-like mentality. I want to remind people that Supreme Court Justice's wife, Jeannie, was in a motherfucking cult.
Yeah.
All right? That bitch was in a cult. And in the 80s through the 90s, and she testified before Congress 30-something years ago. And she has continued the mentality of the mindset because we are seeing what has been going on with this man who's been paid off by, what's his name? I want to say Lex Luthor, but it's not. But
It's just call him Lex Luthor. Yeah, Leonard Leo.
Leonard Leo, who collects doilies with Hitler memorabilia on it from World War II.
Big fan of history. That's all.
Yeah,
Big
that's
fan
what
of
he said.
history. Only one type of history.
And what's mortifying, I don't even know what Justice Jackson has to deal with that. Looking at him like,
God.
I'm gonna cut you. I know she wants to cut him because
could you
how
not?
dare you? And all I'm ever gonna say is a pubic hair on a Diet Coke, and shout out Anita Hill, because the shit got really real really fast. And I don't know, like somebody was saying, I think it was Jon Stewart the other day saying, I didn't expect him to get that fast that quickly.
Yep.
I
That
did.
fascist,
Yep.
that quick.
I did.
Well, and that's been one of the things that's been so hard is, those of us who've been saying, he told you. Like, we knew this would happen. This is exactly what you were told. But, folks were primed to go, yeah, but the system can't change that fast. The way my life works won't change that fast. Yes, it will. It's going to change really fast. This is a tipping point, and we've seen it.
We were Ben and I before the show were discussing these situations about triage that we as an active resistance, which we're working on a better branding, but it's an accurate word to think long term and short term, to think macro and micro, to fight the battles and put out the fires where we can. It's a very they're almost mutually exclusive thought processes, but they can't be anymore.
Because we didn't start the fire. It was always burning. While this world's been turning, children. And you know what? I'm calling this episode The Resistance Gets Amped as...
Well, I told him it's like I feel like we're forming the Avengers. Like we're all here, like we're in love with Barcelona and Catalunya.
Right now we're kind of the Marvels, but whatever.
Yeah. Maybe a knockoff Suicide Squad.
As we joke about this yesterday or this early morning while we were all asleep, Adam Mockler released an announcement that Trump has come out and said we are enacting Project 2025. And this was, specific. I remember having lunch or dinner, a beautiful dinner months ago with a wonderful family of centrist, mostly liberals, whose one of their eldest sons was saying, Project 25 is not a thing. It's a joke.
Oh, yeah.
They're trotting it out. And now we see what's going on. And that same, my homegirl, she just went back to, I won't name her, but she just went back to Cali to do some stuff and some shooting of some show she's in. And she said, I just want to get the family around. It's Orange County people. Pour some wine and say, hey, how's everybody's portfolios going?
Yeah.
Let's talk about what's going on. Let's talk about the defying of the Supreme Court. Because this person's, we're related to justices in LA who are still serving but vote a certain way. And when you're dealing with the realities, it's very interesting because I was raised hardcore. I mean, I was 6 years old at anti-abortion rallies. In the mid 80s.
Sorry,
90s. I'm 39.
Right, we're 39 forever, by the way. That's right.
Okay, I'm the old man of the show.
I'm probably the oldest, but still. I'm 84 years old.
It's completely understandable that people who have a lot going on in their lives and have no historical framework for a madman dictator just thought about the shit going on in their lives and either didn't vote or voted for something different. But now what we're seeing is so obvious. It's in your face, which I think is an asset to us. Ben and I were also talking about, I hope this idiot does, for his stupid birthday, run a bunch of tanks up and down Washington, D.C. I hope he makes it that obvious for people.
To make a Bastille type day?
I just want him to make it
North
so
Korea.
obvious. Yeah, North Korea type thing. Well, and that's what I think it makes sense.
Totally agree. Well, and one of the challenges is, we are used to a certain kind of politicking, where politicians say, okay, this is what I'm going to offer you, and then, okay, I want to run again. This is what I did for you, right? And that's the mechanism. Fascism does not work that way. Timothy Schneider, who's everybody should be reading right now, makes it very clear. A fascist government is not designed to offer services to the people. It is designed to make people more miserable. If your whole electoral strategy is saying everything is awful in your life, this is who to blame, then you can't at the end of 2 years or 4 years or whatever say, oh, this is how I've made your life better. You have to say, see how your life got worse? And so they are not going to do anything to make people's lives better. They're going to make it worse and worse and worse, and then keep saying, blame them, blame them, blame them.
New scapegoats. No solutions, new scapegoats every time.
There's not going to be improvement. So when people are looking at their portfolios in Orange County, and they're going, what is this regime doing for me? This regime never intended to do anything for you. They're not trying to make your life better. They're trying to make you more angry. That's all they know how to do.
And line their pockets. Come on.
I mean, even this whole ridiculousness, and we have to throw it out there because we're not going to shame our sisters, but the cock rocket launch with the 6 queens inside and Katy Perry coming out with a daisy in honor of her child and kissing the ground and saying, I never understood what love really meant.
Yeah, that was painful.
Now, Gayle King's the only one who kind of kept it like she knew, because her wife, Oprah, prove me wrong, bitches. Her wife was like, because, but that was a mortification. And millions, one of them paid $28 million, I'm going to say it's Lauren Sanchez, to get on there, while her husband is making paying $40 million to Melania to make a documentary for Amazon.
Yeah, remember that?
On what the hell is going to be going on in her life. And she hasn't spent but a day in the White House since she got in there. And one of the things you wrote a few days ago is the underestimation of how bad it is and is going to get in the U.S. and how we in Europe and across the world should not be underestimating the consequences that are going to happen here, because Pedro Sanchez, and obviously you all know we live in Catalonia and Spain, and he met with, he had delegations with China. Is what he did, because he's saying, okay, well, we can't trust, and everybody's saying, well, you're going to work with a communist autocratic society. And I said, well, where did this come from?
Yeah,
right.
Where did these iPhones get made? Where did this get manufactured? So if this is the way it's going to have to be right now, one of the things you said is, yes, it is definitely a communist / quasi-capitalist country. Is China a fascist country?
I mean certainly an authoritarian country.
Authoritarian.
Yeah. The terminology is tough to come up with.
China's fascinating, and we don't really have a good terminology for it.
Right.
And we're never taught about them.
Hyper-capitalist, authoritarian regime.
Exactly,
So it's
yeah,
still,
yeah.
to some extent, a controlled economy, which we associate with communism. But it's because the government is authoritarian, it can kind of influence that, that hyper-capitalist, but it is very much a hyper-capitalist economy.
The
And so-
Uyghurs would definitely consider them fascists.
yeah.
But also the fact of the matter is the MAGA movement is, if you study Maoism, there are a lot of similarities to the MAGA movement. The dear leader, here come the famines, the scapegoating, the co-opting education. MAGA Maoism is very real, and I like the idea of throwing it in their faces, because they'll call anybody even slightly left of George Bush a communist, and they're actually running a communist playbook, which is, I think, absolutely ridiculous. Without any of the healthcare.
Well,
You know?
and I think it's that authoritarian angle that we need to extricate, because when people talk about communism, it's just used as a label. Like, let's just, they're communists, therefore bad. Like, okay, are you concerned about having libraries in public schools? Are you concerned about, industries being made public? We do that in the United States. We've nationalized the fire department. Is that communism? Or are you concerned about,
Public
gulags?
libraries.
Because gulags, you're totally fine with, apparently.
And we're,
Right,
we're moving
yeah.
them to, and now we're going to get the homegrowns over there as well.
Yeah, the homegrown's like us. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Please.
Oh no, I mean, like that's like, I intend to be a real pain in the ass when I go back to the States. I'm going to pack all my dirty laundry on top of my clothes. I'm going to have really gross pictures on my phone. I intend to waste some power abusing guy's time for hours, because I'll be like, hey, I'll catch you later, babe. I'm going to hang out here with my feet up.
I have heard about the tourism sector in the United States has been decimated, and I totally get it. Like, folks,
Yes, it
here
went down by
who are going,
17% last
where
month.
should I plan my next vacation? I would suggest to you, not the U.S.
Yeah.
And I feel badly for
Not
the
at
folks in the
all.
U.S. who are somebody who makes beds at a hotel who's going to lose their job. That sucks, but. Don't go to U.S. It is not a safe place.
If
you don't
you're-
want it to be a safe place.
Major countries are already releasing these statements to their travelers not to consider this. not
When
to
you
go.
don't have a real government, you have a government by moronic con man, aspiring fascist that has every little petty tyrant inspired to abuse their government power. It's not safe for people. Like, you have academics that wrote, on the Israeli-Palestine conflict, and they're being held off from entering the United States because of that. You have academics that are being tormented. You have students that are being stripped off the streets and being robbed of their immigration status. You have Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who's alive, thank God, being
Thank you,
thrown
Senator
off
Van
into-
Hollen.
Yeah, really, straight up, really
We
good
were
thing.
very
He gets
concerned that
some
he had
credit.
passed. We had been talking about that.
No, but let's
not.
not also talk about the optics of all of that.
Oh, you mean
in
the fresh kicks and the brand new hat to cover
with
his
that-
shaved head?
Correct.
We can get into it. Let's get into it.
Not only that, there was also the flyover that we just saw some video of.
my
I don't know
gosh.
if it was but there
Google
was
Maps.
This,
Google Maps.
Fucking
splatter
haunting.
of blood. I saw that. And yes, exactly.
Really?
And I don't know if that
I'm
was
not
a
aware.
satellite or a drone, but that was just released 2 nights ago. And so thankfully Van Hollen has seen this. But then one of the ineptitude, the thing of ineptitude that I would like to say, if they cannot, how weak and feckless is this government and unable to do something, if they cannot extricate someone out that they made a mistake for and bring him back.
It
And
is
the
weakness.
fact that Pam Bondi sits up there and lies and lies and lies, and none of the people in the journalistic pool, and I want them to start saying, you're lying. They need to combat this and say, you fucking bitch, what are you talking about? They need to come at it this way. I'm waiting for Jasmine Crockett to call that heifer from Atlanta, from Georgia, the white trash bitch that she is. To her face. It needs to happen. There needs to be F-bombs in the Senate. F-bombs. There cannot be any more. We need to get to fisticuffs if necessary, like they do sometimes in Parliament in the UK. It's happened. Look it up, bitches. Order! Order! And sometimes there cannot be order because we cannot be playing on the same rule book that no longer
Exactly.
exists when the rule book's been motherfucking thrown out. And it was thrown out under George Bush. It was not before. Okay? And I'm going to say George Bush 1 because read my lips on no new taxes. I remember I was 8 years old when that shit went out. And within the year, my parents were like, oh my God, we're going to get audited because money, honey, under the church when it's not taxed. You already know. So there's this lies and manipulation. So what can people do right now to start fighting back? One thing we've said for now, this is the 5th pod, and it just pile on messages through internet, through WhatsApps, through whatever messengers, whatever, through phone calls to your senators and your representatives.
And your governors and your state attorney generals.
That too.
And your...
Well, and one of the things we've talked about too is do not expect the Democratic Party to save you. You need to save the Democratic Party. The party is not going to come up with magical solutions. They are the minority party. They're out of power and they're afraid, right? Yeah. And we need to say to them, it's not that you're the magic solution and don't worry, you can do no wrong. We're saying you as an individual, need to be able to get reelected, and we need to see you fighting back a lot more viscerally and powerfully.
And follow us.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have the courage, we have the courage.
We will tell you that you're going to be okay. You can be afraid. We'll give you the courage.
Absolutely.
Because they don't have it right now.
Well, I always say, like, if you still have elections and you do not use them, you're a schmuck. We have an active party in the United States of America that is trying to establish a dictatorship in the United States of America. They lie through their fucking teeth about it every single day. But every single Trump enabler knows that it'll be an endless list of excuses of, oh, no, it's not really happening. And then when it happens, they'll love it. And it goes back to your point exactly, because MAGA does not feel safe unless they have the power to initiate force against the people that they've been manipulated into believing are threats to them.
Well, yeah. And authoritarianism is, the fundamental kind of underlying thought process of it is this kind of strong daddy mentality. The way that you show love is through abuse, right? And so
because they're so traumatized and abused in their own minds.
And so they're going, oh, these powerful people harm. That's what makes them the strong man. This is a good leader because they abuse others, right? Yeah. And we as liberals have this mommy mentality. The person who cares for me is a better leader, right? And those are going to be in conflict. And you can never say to somebody, hey, you have an authoritarian mindset, but this person is going to harm others. Because they're like, yeah, I want them to harm others. That's what shows power. We have to say, this person is a bad daddy to you. Like, they're going to harm you.
But they actually revel in that. You hear Tucker Carlson, Daddy's home. Daddy's going to spank you, girl.
Yeah, there's some weird...
I mean, what the hell? Because we can smell the gay on YouTube, bitch. Don't act like we don't.
Let me interject with a point that I saw. There's an author who was just on The View recently about the issues with young men growing up and falling for these charlatans. And he had talked about how there is...
You're talking about Scott Galloway.
Yes, that's Scott Galloway. Yes, thank you. And he talked about redefining the concept of masculinity, that you're a protector, you're a provider, you're a procreator. These aren't bad things. Masculinity in itself isn't a bad thing. It's when it's weaponized or completely misunderstood by people. To that point, protecting people is masculine.
Right.
It's if you see marginalized groups of people.
I don't know about that. I feel that sounds really weird.
Because it's hard.
When you think of the tigers and the lions, who's the person who protects them, does the killing, does the feeding? It's the mother.
Yeah.
It's not the king of the jungle, is really the queen of the jungle. That she feeds that bitch. She feeds the male.
I understand.
Now, they kill. So I feel like it's actually more instinctive of a mother to be the protector.
Well, and that's the trick is, what do we mean by protect, right? Because if protect is kill, if protect is harm, then even, us as men have to reflect on, like, wait a second, that can't be the extent of my masculinity is harm.
Fuck no.
Right? And so how can we redefine masculinity so that it's not, I cause harm? And that's tough because we have not been provided models.
Well, we need to make lots and lots and lots of babies. That's how we do it. Yeah.
Well,
I would like to say something about this really quickly, because this has been coming out a lot with Elon Musk and his supposedly 14 plus children, because we don't know. Now, apparently he's been finding these women over time, and like Ashley St. Clair, I can't stand that last name, but I hope that's not your last name. It's not. Okay. So we love it. But one of the things that he's saying is that we need to reproduce more. We need to reproduce more. That's why I have 14 kids. And the thing is, I would like to explain some historical fact to some motherfuckers right now, because from the birth of when God created the world, for those of you, when day 7, to 1970, we created and killed, but amassed just over 4 billion people. 2,000 years to do that. And from 1970 until now, we have more than doubled that. So what took us 2,000 years has now taken us 50 years. We don't need to create more motherfuckers. The thing that's happening while they're saying this is that they want to create more white people.
That's great replacement theory.
It is. And they then turn around and say, as we were talking about projection, deflection, and confession with these motherfuckers, is that the Latinos specifically are taking over this great replacement theory, and it is not. It's the fact that white people look at certain black folks with huge cocks, and Latinos who will whatever be Latin lovers, and you know what? There's a beauty in the mix.
Yeah.
You got a Latino wife
The
too.
George Carlin big dick bombing theory. They have bigger dicks than us. Bomb them.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's this intense fear,
love George
and
Carlin.
and
Yeah,
recognizing
hell
that
yeah.
when you look at the wealthier a country becomes, the slower its population grows, and there's a reason for this, and it is about feminism. You know, women don't feel the need to say, "Oh, okay, I have no power in my life other than to have 12 children for this guy," right? You know, and we've seen this in Italy where women are saying, no, I will not be your mommy. I will not take care of you and have 7 kids.
Finally.
I'm going to get a job. And the population doesn't replace itself. And you know what? That's fine. We don't need the world's population to continue to increase.
Women get to have careers and they don't have to be broodmares.
Except they do not get to vote. Let's make another fact.
That's the
Save
Republican
Act
thing.
was passed last weekend.
In the House, yeah.
In
they're
the House,
looking
and
to
we'll
do
go up
this
to
in the
we'll
Senate.
see what happens with the Senate and all of their scruples. And this Save Act will require you to show your birth certificate that matches your voter's registration, and your passport or a passport. Now, the majority, and by that I mean over 80% of the women who are married in that country take the name of their husband. I think it's like 70%, over 70%.
It's a large scale.
And that means that their voter registration will not match their birth certificate. And remember, less than 40% of the country has a passport.
Yeah, it's a poll tax.
So
they
what
make
this
you get a
means
passport to
is
vote.
that women who make up nearly 52% of the voting populace will not be able to vote. And that then infringes upon the abilities of the Democrat or independent parties to get a bigger vote. So they're taking away the rights of women, specifically focused, again, whether you're white, black, trans, whatever the hell, they're taking away that right.
Absolutely.
And they did it already. They passed it.
And they're shutting. So, okay, they're going to force you to purchase a passport. They're going to force you to purchase a passport.
And
to
we want you
actually
to
be
get a
able to
passport.
vote.
Yeah, you want
Rob
a
and I
passport
and
if
my
you can.
homeboy want you to get.
Oh, absolutely.
They want you to
Get a
passport, please.
I'm just saying there are a lot of people that can't afford that.
Yeah.
And so that inherently is a poll tax, but they're also shutting down embassies and they're shutting down offices that will provide those passports.
Especially for expats.
So
Well, and the United States electoral system is such a mess. For folks here in Spain, in Europe, we don't have an election. We have 50 elections on
Yeah.
the same day, and they're a mess. And what will happen is, a particular state is going to say, this candidate won. And by creating new chaos in the system, it will allow the federal government to then say, we don't believe that all the women in your state were properly vetted, so your votes don't count.
Yep.
Oh, we believe you may have let trans people vote in your state. Your votes don't count.
That's coming.
And so it's going to be another reason to say your elections don't matter. Therefore, we don't have to honor elections.
look at North Carolina right now.
Yep.
Right now, in
about
North
it?
Carolina state Supreme Court race, this scumbag Republican has been judge shopping and coming up with asinine legal theories to throw votes out of people that have been mail-in votes, which mostly impacts the military. But he lost a very close race for the state Supreme Court, and his cronies on the state Supreme Court are helping try to steal that seat from the Democrat who won the fucking seat.
She won the seat and has not been able to take the job yet.
Many
and we're
recounts, I
months
believe
in.
2 at least, and there are audits, and it's been through 1,000 different ways to make it safe. It's the same thing, the 2020 playbook, the MAGA election was stolen lies playbook, and they're going to keep doing this shit.
Yeah.
Is there
They're
a way
gonna
to
keep-
win that back for her?
I mean, no. So they're going to go through the process of trying to make tens of thousands of people that voted a long time ago in November have to fix their ballots. But that's being played out. It's already played out in the state court. It'll be played out in the federal court. So right now, the North Carolina Supreme Court seat that has been won fair and square is being stolen from the actual winner. And thank God we won in Wisconsin, because that would be another one. That's another swing state they were going to steal. It's a fucking, this is exactly what you said is exactly playing out in front of our faces.
And one of the ways this is going to manifest is if you're any other country in the world and you're saying, should the United States be a trading partner? Should the United States be an ally? Is it dependable? Americans think, oh, okay, the kind of party in power switches every 4 or 8 years, and this is okay. If you are any other country in the world, are you going, I want to get into a long-term alliance with this country?
Hell to the no.
Even if a Democrat wins the White House in 4 years, if I were any other country in the world, I'd go, yeah, but
what happens after.
52% of your population may have swung this way this time, but 52 could switch the other way next time. You are not reliable.
But that's the
And
other
these
thing,
consequences
too,
are going to
mate.
go on for decades.
Yeah, you're right.
And
You're
you
right.
know, just over 48% of the population voted for that, of the people who voted. Because remember, 91 million people didn't vote.
Yeah. So many people stayed home.
Nearly
and made a big mistake.
52% of the population voted for someone else. 47 for
Right.
Kamala and 4 point algo for somebody else. So there's not a mandate, folks. There was not a mandate. He never has got 50+%. Biden did.
Yeah, right. When Trump was setting everything on fire from his
Obama
last
did.
crisis, where he destroyed the economy, he's on his new crisis a day to destroy the economy. We were able to put a stop to that. But I agree with you completely in terms of the reliability of the United States, because when you're cutting pennies on the dollar per day AIDS medicine and letting 1 million children die because they don't have the poorest of the poorest children, you fucking Christians, you fucking moral majority, you're just going to let millions of kids die without access to antivirals and access to vaccines. I have a personal tragedy with AIDS in my life. I think
Right.
these fucking
right,
assholes
man.
are going to bring back an AIDS crisis.
Oh, yeah.
These fucking...
Well, they've already said it. They've already said it's happening already. By the end of the month, it would be happening.
Because you can't be on a treatment and then have it removed in the middle of your treatment. That's how you get super viruses.
But Rob, where is this happening? Where are they taking it away from?
All the rest of the world, those
Africa
people.
specific.
In Africa,
Those-
right.
And that is the thing, because they don't, need I say more?
Some don't care and some want it.
Right. Oh,
Like
yeah.
they-
Stephen
That's
Miller
that-
wants the genocide. Stephen Miller
And
wants...
Stephen Miller is a Jew.
Right,
That's
yeah.
the crazy thing. He
Somebody
thinks that he
didn't-
lucked out with that last name, that he's not, but he is.
Stephen Miller's a Jew.
And-
I didn't know that.
Yes,
He's
exactly.
Jewish.
He's got Jewish
So he
friends.
didn't
Grandpa.
read anything up on... He read the bad guy story and he identified with the bad guys. That's amazing.
And it's not surprising, though.
That's Trump's number 2, by the way.
Because this is the same thing. Let's not forget the history of New York and how Italians were originally treated in New York, and how they really think, especially on the housewives, that they are just as Anglo-Saxon Protestant as a Scandi or a Brit. And it is a it's this, we co-opt this culture because white is right. And I know, because my mom, even as she used to say, I'm white Hispanic, because her blood is more European and not mestizo, they would label this in the 30s, 40s, 50s, white Hispanic or mestizo Hispanic on the birth certificates. Sounds crazy to people here. Yeah, that's what happened.
Well, and you guys know that. I mean, the history of New York is a great lens into the way the United States
Ken
was
Burns'
designed.
documentary is the best to watch.
Central Park. If you ever get a chance to go to Central Park,
Please,
enjoy
child.
it. Beautiful place. See Central Park. And then find out it was a black neighborhood.
Right.
Right. This is not
Yeah.
unintentional. The city of
And
New
Italian.
York was
And
very
Italian.
much designed. Hey, let's put the black neighborhood here. Let's put the Italian neighborhood here. Let's hire Irish cops. And we don't. The Irish people were not considered white, but we can pit these groups against one another very intentionally, so that the people who the white people, the WASPs who live in Connecticut, can make everybody else fight.
Yeah.
And can sit back and reap the rewards.
This
And then when they go, oh, hey, we need to
Bernie
then turn,
Sanders. Okay, shut up.
this black neighborhood into Central Park, we'll just kick all these folks out.
There's a video that is going out right now that Bernie Sanders did in a university in the 90s, early 90s. And he was, so we're looking at maybe it's, 2005. I think 2007. He's 60 years old. And he's saying, if I had I can't do the impression, but if I told you that I was going to do only taxes and things that really generated only stuff for the top 1% and took away from the bottom 90 to give it to that 1%, you would have a vote for me. But that's what Republicans do. But what they sell it is by dividing the people, by saying, look at all these black people in brown people that are taking away what used to be white
Women
jobs.
women hate. There's a cancel culture, and women are
Now
stealing
they
your
wa-
masculinity and all this bullshit.
And he's
Distraction,
saying this
distraction.
20 and 30 years ago. I want to say it was in the 90s, but it might have been just 20 years ago in the 60s. And we see that this is how, and you see the people in the audience, these, young minds, these 20 to 25-year-olds saying, mm-hmm. And I wonder, as was a joke that came out yesterday in something, in 20, 30 years, they'll all be in their 50s making millions and voting Republican.
Yeah.
Because they have bought the lie that for some reason everything is better under a Republican economy. And it's a bloody lie.
So wait,
It's never been true.
it's never been
Not-
true.
not since
not,
Reagan, anyway.
not in my life. Not in my lifetime.
Not in my
Yeah,
lifetime.
maybe you go back to like the 40s again, where they want to make America great again. But like, yeah, every single Republican president in my lifetime has caused a recession, and every single Democrat president in my time has fixed it. And but
Damn
then
right.
couldn't possibly fix all of the damage because Republicans
Same
love
in Spain,
torturing people.
bitches. Look it up. Same in Spain, bitches.
They
Look
love
it up.
torturing people. But here, let's end on what the fuck are we gonna do?
Exactly.
What the hell are we gonna do? And I want Ben to take the lead here.
So my answer on this is everything.
smack my mic
And this is a challenge for folks. There are tons of ways that you can push back, but whatever you do, you're going to look back and you're going to go, I didn't do enough, right? So you need to do multiple things. You should be writing to your congressman and your senator. You should be on social media. You should also be out in the streets. And it needs to be broad. And this is one of the things we were talking about. I hate the fact that I'm agreeing with David Brooks.
Yeah, right.
David freaking
Crazy
Brooks,
times.
who is, I absolutely think is responsible for a lot of this. But he was pointing out, like right now, the Big Ten universities have kind of banded together and
Yes,
said, we are
well
going to
said.
defend one another, which is wonderful. But it shouldn't be 10 universities, although there's, 14 schools in the Big Ten now.
Right, yeah,
So
yeah.
they can't, not great at math. So, across industries, we need nationwide strikes. We need all of the unions to be working together. But
Solidarity.
this is going to be a massive solidarity movement, or it's going to require it, right?
Yeah.
And I don't feel like people in the United States, especially, I think globally, people are like more aware. They're looking at the United States and they're like, we've had fascism here.
Right.
You don't
No
want
thanks.
that.
Yeah.
But folks in the United States need to be thinking about, do you want to go into the woods with a rifle? Because we're very close to that point. And so if you don't want to be joining
Maybe,
a resistance movement and taking up arms, then what is the thing you're going to do before that? Do that now. Because that's your next
What
step.
could some of those things be?
I mean, I think nationwide strike I've heard folks talking about, building that infrastructure, organizing a strike. I'm an old school union guy, union president. Strike buildup is hard. It's a lot of work, right? To get people to the place where they're willing to say, I'm not going to go into work.
Yes, sir.
It took us, in the state of Oregon, 10 years to get people to do a one-day teacher strike that was statewide. But it brought in $2 billion for education. Like, when you shut something
remember that.
down,
That's
it
right.
wakes
I
people up,
remember that.
right?
and also forming a union.
Yeah.
Really?
I was I was part of the group. It takes a lot of
Yeah,
people.
of course.
to
a
Yeah,
village.
yeah, yeah.
Right? It takes a lot of
Thanks,
people to work on
Hillary.
that.
But forming a union
it
is
down.
also an act of resistance. I
Yes.
mean, we have an administration now, on top of all the other horrifying things, is extremely anti-labor, is going to attack labor and organizing rights, forming a union, collective bargaining. These are great. I'm also a union man for 10 years, and I think it's one of the greatest things ever. The proven scientific data shows that organized labor closes the wealth gap.
You know what? I'm sorry that you said the labor thing, because really quickly before we shout out, and then I want to talk about the printing publishing before we shout out, so we can get people following that too.
Yes.
Specialist for the Department of Labor, Daniel Berulis, has made allegations in a sworn declaration that he did before Congress just a few days ago as a federal whistleblower, that he said he's been targeted with threatening notes and photographs showing him walking his dog. This was first reported a few days ago by NPR rather, but apparently he has reviewed copies that someone left the Department of Labor in a specific office open.
The NLRB, National Labor Relations Board.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So he noticed that a series of anomalous events had happened to the board's computer systems that included changes that were using multi-factor authentication, and they went back to an IP address where? In Russia. And that this was going on when they had been, the offices were closed and locked for the night. And it just, like an X-File episode, turned on and started funneling all these things, which had just, of course, throws me back to the recollection of Russia, if you're listening, the 300 thing. And that night, deep, went on and they took those emails.
Trump and Putin have a very special relationship, and I think he's opening the floodgate. I think he's opening the keys to the government to do whatever the hell Putin wants. I think he's opening the keys to the country to be completely exploited. But we need to have that solidarity, and I honestly believe in us. You don't strip. Like, these are the dumbest fascists to ever try fascism. I would be embarrassed to lose to a free America to these people. Of course,
It's already been embarrassing.
I mean, of course, I'm just saying, we're at the precipice. We all agree we're at the precipice of horrifying, irreversible damage and potentially a path to authoritarianism. Unity, solidarity, winning the information war, organizing, and replacing fascists in power with not fascist are all active tools, and boycotts.
And
Let's
centrist
start-
leftist independent media.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
another
And
thing I would add
publishing,
is,
sir,
yes,
publishing.
and you know, if there
Take
is
us home,
something
Ben.
you're not willing to do, find somebody who's doing it and figure out a way to support them. So if you can't speak out because and for legit reasons, there are folks who are saying, I am afraid. Okay, if you are afraid to
Murkowski,
say
anybody?
if you're trans and you're afraid to speak out, buy a book by a trans author who is speaking out. If you are a person of color and you are saying it is really, really scary to be living here in, you know, the reddest
Rural
part of
red
Texas,
states.
right? Then find a black author who is speaking out loudly and buy their books, like, or watch their TV show or whatever. But there, you've got to figure out how to support the people who are speaking out right now.
Tell us about your company, your publishing company.
Yeah, so this is exciting. One of the things that we are doing in the next few months is we're putting out the first of a journal. So we're going to put out an anthology called the Antifa Lit Anthology, and poetry, short fiction, and we got such an overwhelming response. Authors all over the United States and some all in other countries in the world saying, I desperately need to express my frustration, my fear, what is happening to my world. Thank you for this opportunity. So we kind of culled the best of those, and we went, oh no, we're not just going to put out one of these things, because it's not like fascism is going to go away. We're going to make this a regular thing. So it's going to become the Antifa Lit Journal. So keep an eye out for that, and not only support that, but if you are an author, if you are a poet, if you are an artist, and you're saying, I need a venue, the nice thing I can offer is I'm outside of the jurisdiction of Trump. Like, I can put that thing out, I can put that out, pseudonymously, whatever. But if you need to express yourself, we want to create a means for you to do so.
You also talk to authors.
Oh my gosh, yes. I also have a podcast, Writers Not Writing, weekly show where I interview authors, and I changed it. It used to be really kind of just lighthearted, like, hey, how do we get to, authors get to know their readers and vice versa.
How do you deal with writer's block?
Yeah. How do you deal with writing? What else have you been doing when you're procrastinating? Because that's just kind of more fun than like, what do you do to write? And now I'm saying, no, we're going to talk to writers about how you use your platform to fight back.
And we can find that where all good podcasts are streamed?
Yes, that's on everywhere. Writers Not Writing.
Writers Not Writing. And also you can follow my brothers Not a Pipe Publishing on Instagram. Look it up on .com as well.
Every platform, I'm there.
And remember, my loves, we want you following us here is where The Way Works Now podcast on Instagram and YouTube. And folks, we want to give a mad shout out to everybody for following. We want to thank you for all of the thousands of likes and clicks that we're getting. We really, really appreciate it as we grow this independent mainstream media independent non-mainstream media outside of the United States of America. Shout out Liam, gracias por estar aquí. Happy Holy Week for everybody, and power to the people. This is Tori Sparks.
Fight the good fight.
Fight the good fight, as we were told.
Thank you. That was
Everybody knows that the dice are loaded. Everybody rolls with their fingers crossed. Everybody knows the war is over. Everybody knows the good guys lost. Everybody knows that the fight was fixed. The poor stay poor, the rich get rich. That's how it goes. And everybody knows. Everybody knows that the boat is leaking. Everybody knows that the captain lied. Everybody got this broken feeling, like their father or the dog just died. Everybody talking to their pockets. Everybody wants a box of chocolates and a long stem rose. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that you love me, baby. Everybody knows that you really